Hey guys, Gary here with the Northwest JKs. We got more work going on in the Mechanic Hack Shack. Come on in, let's talk about it. So we're going to be installing the Jock Johnny Joint kit that pushes out the bushings that come in almost all of the axles, even stock axles, even these massively built up D60s from Dynatrac. These are the Pro Rock 60s, and they still come with these rubber bushing joints for the upper control arms. And Jock makes this great kit to swap those out with Johnny joints. Now we all know Johnny joints are just the best joints out there, and so this kit is CE 9102 JK, and I'll walk you through what's in here first. So first of all, you got a Johnny joint already pressed into a block. This block is going to be welded into the tower for the upper control arm on the passenger side. It comes with another Johnny joint that's separate, and this one gets pressed into the housing here on the driver's side. So we got that one taken care of. It comes with an installation tool to help you press the Johnny joints in, and it comes with two bolts, and these two bolts are special because they have Zerk fittings on them, and so the Zerk fittings through the bolt let you get grease into those Johnny joints to extend their life. So why do you do this? There's a couple of things. The bushings just don't last that long when you're building your rig for high flex. Those bushings do great, can last a long time with the stock amount of flex on a Jeep, and even doing a suspension upgrade where you're swapping out springs. Sometimes those will get you a little bit more flex than stock, but not a crazy amount of flex. And with this kit that I got going on here, this setup, it's got 12 inches of suspension travel, and that is going to wear out those bushings. So come on in and let's take a closer look and see what's going on. All right, taking a closer look here, you can see in this joint here, there's a couple of things going on. First of all, there's an amount of the rubber that is already being pressed out and split from the inside of the joint. Now, this axle is only 2.5 years old, so the flex that these rubber bushings afford you is just not meant for such high flex setup. So if you're going for high articulation, you definitely want to swap these out with Jock's Johnny joints. On the passenger side, we got a couple other strange things going on. The bushing is also shot. You can see here how the rubber has separated away from the sleeve of the bushing itself, and put the new bracket into here with the Jock Johnny joint already set up. So you see this came off after prying it up, but just a reminder, before I took it off, I did loosen the gem nut. That makes it a lot easier to get it off when both sides are connected, so that you can loosen the gem nut while it's solid on both sides. So to make it easier to work on the control arm, the upper control arm tower, I'm going to get the track bar out of the way. And to be able to get this bolt out, I'm gonna need to get rid of the tie rod as well. So everything is moving around over here. So I loosened these up already, so I can just pull these down. All right, so now that I have the upper control arm off, I thought I'd show you a pic of the bush and how it doesn't look so great. That rubber is obviously torn up a bunch. All right, so Jock's instructions show to hammer this out, but before I start on that, I'm gonna get my airline out of the way just to make sure I don't accidentally hit it. All right, so like I said, Jock gave instructions to hit this with a hammer, so hopefully that's gonna let it slide out. We'll see. we go. Bad guy's out. All right, so Rock Jock says to use their tool here to hammer in. This is their tool to just hammer, like tap this in. I'm gonna put a little bit of lube in there just to make it a little bit easier for it to get in. Just a little bit. It doesn't take much. When you're pressing stuff in, if you can add a little bit of lube, that helps a ton. Check it for square. It looks square. It started going in. Yep, looks good. All right, so the instructions show to measure a line to cut at 2.5 inches on the rear side and 2 inches on the front. And that's from a level plane across the top of the axle, not from the very base of it where it connects, but from a level spot at the top. The other thing that I did is I went ahead and mocked up a complete mock-up of the outside of this, and so that way once I cut, I can still place this in, and hopefully when I put it all the way in place and kind of lock it in, yeah, my hole's pretty close in there. I can re-put this in here. The gussets will still be there after this is there, and you can see as I press it in, my holes get pretty close to lining up. So my attempt here is just to make sure that the joint ends up exactly in the right spot when I'm done, so I can get it in. The other thing that I had to do is I noticed as I put in the bar here that they provided, I lined it up here. It was sitting up where the joint was visibly higher than the joint in the axle as it is today. So I went ahead and cut the bottom, I don't know, I just eyeballed it, 3/8 of an inch, 1/2 an inch maybe. Yeah, probably a full 1/2 an inch, just to make sure that it will sit low enough. And so it definitely is low enough now. As I cut the old joint out, I will probably have to prop this up a tiny bit. But obviously I need to do that rather than it being too high. So I'm gonna try my best to get this situated in the exact spot as the old one. Wow, look at that. That's not bad. Well, that's not bad at all. All right, Rock Jock recommends drilling a few holes in the sidewalls of your bracket so that way you can do some spot welds. All right, so I made this cardboard template that I talked about earlier to help me kind of center exactly where that's supposed to be. But then I went and I said, you know, I can also just measure using my laser level. And you see I got it on this side coming exactly through the center of the bolt here for the driver's side joint. And then I measured the axle from side to side because of the way the floor jacks sit and holding onto the axle is not perfectly level. It's off by maybe like a 1/16 of an inch, probably like an amount that doesn't even matter. But in any event, I went ahead and set this up so that way this bolt is, you know, just a tiny fraction above the center line. So you can see here, we got the laser just a tad bit, and I leveled it off on this side as well. Just the slightest amount below. It's sitting in there. I'm not sure if you can see it from there or not, but basically there's a spot here in the front, right behind this hydraulic line, that I'm gonna tack it in place right there. And I probably have a green line straight across my forehead. So it is not a cutting laser, I can guarantee you that much. So I'll get my stuff on and then put a little tack on there, and then I'll remove that cardboard and then burn in the rest. Like I've talked about, I have a couple of plug welds to put in, and then some welds around the outside edges. Wherever I can get, I'll go ahead and weld that up. I'm just going to check again with the laser. Let's see if we're still lined up over here. That is looking like it's going right through the center of that bolt. Look at that. That is about as center as you can get. Yeah, I'm going for it. That looks pretty good. All right. All right, so I've now finished welding up the plate with the Johnny joint in it on the passenger side. There's one thing that I did forget to mention earlier, though, is that Jock does suggest, it's in the instructions, I guess it's more than a suggestion, it's what you should do, that one part of the plate that the Johnny joint is welded into has a tapered edge. That tapered edge should be pointing forward. So you want to make sure that as you put it into the slot of the bracket on your axle, that you've cut and then slid in that plate into your cut bracket. Then you will point the tapered edge forward. Let me show you my welds. All right, so I don't know, they turned out all right. Welded all the way around. My plug welds were not the best. I feel like they were pretty deep to fill in, and it just got really hot in there as I was circling around the outside edge, and they kind of just pulled up from the heat and then spilled out. I probably should have taken a couple passes at it. So do a layer, let that cool, and then do another layer. So you can kind of see they've just pulled up and spilled out. But the back edge looks pretty good. That's a nice solid weld there, and that ain't going anywhere. I've now taped it up, masked it all up, gotten some cardboard in the way so that way I can get some paint on it. Also, my track bar bracket looks like it's lost some paint, as well as I ground some off so that I could ground the axle as I was welding. So I'm gonna now get some primer on these and let that dry. So while that paint is drying, I thought I'd show you another thing that comes with the Jock kit, and it's these greasable bolts. It's got a Zerk fitting on it, so it lets you get lube into the Johnny joint. The Johnny joint is a fully greasable, fully rebuildable joint. If you take care of it and lube it up maybe twice a year, you know, if you got a lot of water crossings, you do a lot of you know, getting it muddy and stuff, maybe even more than that. It can last you a good amount of time. They're also rebuildable, so you can press them out, put new ones in when they do get loose. It is pre-lubed when it comes, so you don't need to fill it up. You just need to get a little bit of grease into the bulb, a couple of squirts maybe. It's also important that you don't over grease them, because then you're going to add tension inside of the joint, and there's really no place for all of that grease to go. So you want to make sure not to overdo it. And this is a 1/2 inch bolt that comes and it fits perfectly inside of the Johnny joint. However, stock was a 12 millimeter bolt. And 12 millimeter was great for the joint that was there, as well as the control arms. The fork end of the control arms was 12 millimeter, and 12 millimeter is about 1/2 millimeter smaller than a 1/2 inch bolt. So my control arms, and this is certainly not true for every control arm, but on my control arms, the 12 millimeter bolt, the 12 millimeter hole on them was not big enough to fit a 1/2 inch bolt. So I basically took a grinding bit, it's an air grinding tool, and just bored out the inside of that hole very slightly, just around a couple of times in there, just to take off the smallest amount of material. You want to make sure not to overdo it. You don't want that overboard. You don't want it loose around your bolt. That's just going to make for a sloppy suspension. So basically I took off a tiny bit at a time and did test fits with the bolt going through there until it fit the shoulder entirely. And so once that's done, then you get it all set up and you're all golden. All right, guys, thanks for joining me here on this installation of the Jock Johnny joint upper control arm kit for JKs. The driver's side was a piece of cake. Very easy to hammer out the bushing that was in there. Very easy to then hammer in the new Johnny joint. The passenger side was a lot more work. Passenger side obviously required cutting off the bracket and then welding in the plate with the new Johnny joint in it. I think the part that took the longest there was that Jock recommends only welding about 1 inch at a time, because you don't want to overheat the plate and everything in there, because then it's going to overheat the Johnny joint itself and burn out the rubber inside of there. So you got to do 1 inch worth of welding, wait like, I don't know, half an hour for it to cool back down again, and then do another inch. And I don't know, there's probably there must be 10 to 12 inches worth of welds in there. So it took a long time, spanning a couple of days. So it started one night, rolled over into the next day. So it's a lot of work, but it's pretty cool. Can't wait to see all the extra flex I'm getting at it. More importantly, I don't want to keep blowing up rubber bushings, so this is going to be the solution to that problem. Thanks for joining me, guys.